This episode is brought to you by That Gosh Darn Hippie Show. Featuring music from the days of vinyl, it's the grooviest thing to hear on your radio. Greetings, mortals. Welcome to another session of the Infernal Court in musical hell. I'm Diva, your judge, jury, executioner, and Lord of Darkness help me, I do not know what to make of Yellow Submarine. Yes, it's a cult classic with its abundance of psychedelic imagery and unique characters, and was probably many a child's introduction to the Beatles and their music. But honestly, this is one weird movie. I can't quite get into it. And apparently the Beatles weren't quite into it either, as they participated as little as possible to fulfill contract obligations. All their spoken lines are voice doubles, all the music is pre-recorded, with only a handful of the songs not being previously released elsewhere. But they did like the finished product well enough to film a quick live-action cameo at the end. Was it worth the effort? Let's examine the case of Yellow Submarine and find out. Our story begins in Pepperland, a magical kingdom beneath the sea, filled with music and joy and a lot of funky cardboard cutout people. But all that changed when the Blue Meanies attacked.
Pepperland is a tickle of joy on the blue belly of the universe. It must be scratched.
The Blue Meanies are so wholly negative that even the word yes is anathema to them, and they trap Pepperland's protectors, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, not that one, thank Lucifer, before launching into a multi-pronged surrealist offensive.
The bonkers?
No,
Clowns?
no,
Snapping turps?
no,
Anti-music missiles?
no,
The dreadful flying gloves?
no.
Already this movie is giving me a mild freak out, and we're not even 5 minutes in. This is the kind of film where you'll either be alienated from the whole thing before the title sequence is over, or you'll just figure this may as well happen and go along for the ride. The Meanies' attack freezes the people of Pepperland, but an elderly gent by the name of Fred manages to elude their bombs and the Chief Meanie's pet glove. That's going to be a new addition to my nightmares right there. At the urging of the even more elderly Lord Mayor, Fred takes the titular Yellow Submarine, which currently sits atop an Aztec temple. Trust me, everything in this movie makes as much sense in context, what little of it there is. And he sets off to find help, sailing through the opening titles and into Liverpool, where we're thrown violently into Eleanor Rigby.
Ah, look at all the lonely people.
And hey, there are worse songs to be thrown violently into. After that little sequence, we come across Ringo, who's being stalked by the submarine in a kind of cute Looney Tunes way.
I jump into the River Mersey, but it looks like rain.
Suicidal depression. Hilarious. Fred emerges and babbles enough of an explanation for Ringo to agree to help, but first we need to pick up the rest of the band, a task that involves a lot of Scooby-Doo doors and some side trips that are weird even by the standards of what we've seen so far.
We've got to find Paul, haven't we? It's all in the mind.
Here we should discuss sin number 2 and my main sticking point with this movie. It's not so much that it's weird, but too much of it is just weird for the sake of weird. There are plenty of musicals that get a little, or even a lot, surreal from time to time. Here, just the concept of people singing their hearts out during intense emotional moments is kind of peculiar when you think about it. But this is 90 straight minutes of pure, unalloyed strange, with scarcely a moment to catch your breath between one acid sequence and the next. It's a little overwhelming. With our quartet finally assembled, everyone loads into the submarine, and we are off with All Together Now.
A, B, C, D, can I bring my friend to tea?
This song didn't get released by the Beatles until a couple years after they recorded it, and honestly, I can't blame them. In fact, sin number 3 is that as far as examples of the Beatles catalog goes, this one is kind of uneven. Don't get me wrong, there is plenty of top-notch material to be had here. Eleanor Rigby, Nowhere Man, All You Need Is Love. But the title song is kind of meh. Octopus's Garden is the best underwater theme song with Ringo on lead vocals, don't at me. And All Together Now is kind of dopey. And then you have Only a Northern Song, which is mostly just a sample of the Beatles in their experimental phase, both musically and pharmaceutically. The problem is, in order for Fred and the Beatles to get back to Pepperland,
you gotta go through a whole ocean of bad.
Actually, it's more like several seas of bizarre. The first is the Sea of Time, where time goes all wonky. It was better when Mystery Science Theater 3000 did it.
Well, alls I know is I want my chicken puppet back. Hey, how'd that happen?
Everyone on board the submarine starts going backwards and forwards in time rapidly. And yes, seeing John Lennon age into an old man is a bit awkward in retrospect. But they get through the situation mostly by singing When I'm 64.
Doing the garden, digging the weeds.
Wow, the original lyrics to Seasons of Love were very different. Anyway, everyone is back at their correct age, and we move on to the Sea of Science.
It doesn't really matter what clothes I wear or how I fare.
This sequence reminds me of nothing so much as the Meet the Soundtrack segment of Fantasia, and is likewise a good time to make a quick trip to the restroom if you need one. Somewhere in all of that, they pick up a kind of dinosaur elephant thing, which they promptly drop off at the Sea of Monsters, which is exactly what it says on the tin. And not a demigod in sight. There is some nice underscore, however. It's strange that the Beatles would get musically overshadowed in their own movie, but George Martin's soundtrack is the saving grace here. It's got a beautiful dreamlike quality, with lots of impressionistic and modern classical influences, and adds a much-needed note of subtlety to all the strangeness. Something other than a song happens in this sea, as Ringo gets ejected from the sub by touching the Do Not Touch button, and needs to be rescued from kinky boot beasts, their words, not mine, some kind of boxing kangaroo thing, and...
Engines.
The submarine spits out some stereotypical cavalry to deal with the stereotypical natives, and Ringo is rescued. But a giant vacuum beast comes along and eats everything, even itself, sending our heroes into the Sea of Nothing. At this point, the motor goes on the fritz, which is unfortunate as the Sea of Nothing has, well, nothing in it, certainly not anything like a repair shop. In fact, the only sign of life is... well, I'm not sure what it is, but it's probably going to write the complete works of Shakespeare eventually.
Jeremy. Hillary. Boob. Fud.
Jeremy is a scholar of pretty much everything, and the Fab Four ask him for help with the motor because, seriously, do you see any other options at this point?
He fixed it. Great, let's go.
I must complete my bust. 2 novels, finish my blueprints, begin my begee.
He's a satire of academics or something, and also an excuse to break into Nowhere Man.
He's as blind as he can be, just sees what he wants to see.
The engine gets fixed, and Ringo feels sorry for Jeremy being the only thing in nothing, and is all, "Aw, can we keep him?" So with our protagonists up to an even half dozen and some more lovely music from Martin, we're on our way to the foothills of the Headlands. Which doesn't fit in with the sea theme, but never mind.
Hey, it's awfully quiet.
Sweet Lucifer, they must have done zero maintenance on that sub while it was parked on top of the pyramid. Jeremy fixes the propeller in short order, which has the unfortunate effect of causing the submarine to take off with Fred and nobody else on board. No matter, time to get even trippier with the animation.
Lucy in the sky with diamonds.
Not really a sin, more of an observation. On the scale of justifying the weird episodic adventures that befall our protagonists in a bizarre fantasy world, Yellow Submarine falls below The Wizard of Oz or Labyrinth, but above Alice in Wonderland. There is something of an overarching story and motivations that connect everything together, but generally it's all an excuse for assorted varieties of odd. Make of that what you will. Pepperland is nearby as there's pepper sprinkled on the ground, which has the effect of the headlands sneezing the protagonists into the sea of holes.
John? Paul? George?
No, you've already had one Scooby-Doo chase sequence, no fair doing another. Also, which of these do you suppose leads to Narnia? Anyway, Ringo picks up a Chekhov's hole, Jeremy gets snatched up by a meanie, and everyone else tumbles into Pepperland, or what's left of it. Fred and the Beatles are able to locate the Lord Mayor and revive him with a bit of music. The Lord Mayor is pleased to see the Beatles, as they're the spitting images of the Lonely Hearts Club Band, and can rally the people to fight back. Problem is, they don't have any instruments, and the meanies have taken away anything that can be used as such. So the Beatles sneak into the bandstand where the instruments are kept, while the meanies torture their captives. Using some cutouts, actual frozen residents? I'm not sure. As cover, the Beatles sneak into the bandstand, slipping past an entire field of sleeping blue meanies in the process. They get all suited up, but it turns out there is a bit of a complication.
Hey, it's about scene, lads. We're surrounded.
Oh, heck. 1,000,000 billion meanies.
Look, I can accept the weird psychedelic everything. I can even accept that the only way to stop this force of absolute negativity is for the Beatles to get dressed up in multicolored beards and perform one or two of their greatest hits. But I cannot accept that these guys ran all the way up a hill that was absolutely covered in sleeping meanies without noticing that it was absolutely covered in sleeping meanies. Despite the fact that everyone is still sleeping, the Beatles have to wait until morning to attempt to sneak out. Unfortunately, when they do so, they step on a random bagpipe and trip the creepy clown alarm. And again with the Scooby-Doo chase, you have all the invention that animation fueled by certain controlled substances can offer, and that's the only slapstick gag you can come up with? The Beatles elude their pursuers and strike up a rousing rendition of Sgt. Pepper's etc., getting the color back into people's cheeks and igniting the spark of rebellion. The Chief Meanie, needless to say, is none too pleased with this turn of events.
Who is responsible for this?
Rimsky-Korsakov.
Oh, come on, the punchline wasn't that bad. I kind of liked it, in fact. Chief Meanie sends the glove to take out the rabble-rousers, but since John can make words appear in the air now, just go with it. He defeats it with a wall of text. With gloves sent packing, thank Lucifer, the Beatles set out to release the actual Sgt. Pepper's thanks to the hole Ringo pocketed a few acid sequences back. There's a bit of indulgent, oh wow, check out our doppelgangers business, but there are still meanies about that need to be conquered by throwing music at them, such as the meanie attack dog. Dogs? It's kind of hard to tell with this animation style.
If you're lonely, you can talk to me. Hey.
Ringo releases Jeremy. Oh yeah, Jeremy has been a POW of the meanies this whole time, and the meanie army is on the run, with only the Chief Meanie and his abused underlings staying to fight. But Jeremy has a few tricks up his non-existent sleeve.
Turn into a flower and bloom. 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 Bloom.
Wow, and here I thought Troll in Central Park was the first movie to defeat the villain by turning them into a rose bush. But John is magnanimous in victory and calls the meanies to join in the love-in. The Chief Meanie agrees, and if you thought things were trippy before, you ain't seen nothing yet. And so that concludes, this bit.
Catchy tune, that. I can't seem to get it out of my head. Don't shake it. That's what we've been doing all night, huh?
Okay, as much as I can understand why the Beatles wanted to put their seal of approval on this, the live-action part at the end is just indulgent and unnecessary, and I think kind of spoils the mood of the ending. Also, All Together Now isn't the best song to go out on. Still, it beats Spice World. Yellow Submarine isn't bad, it's just different. It's kind of like Fantasia, but with more of a plot arc, mostly an excuse to do some creative animation sequences to good music. For me, the entire thing is a bit too uneven to be truly great, but I do see why other people like it. This is hard. I'm used to judging bad movies, not movies that are just not to my taste. Can't I just deal with, I don't know, an unnecessary sequel or a silly jukebox musical or... yes, as a matter of fact, that will do nicely. Thank you.